Oh,
record.
you're meant to hit recording. Sorry. You're meant to hit record.
Legendary. All right. So the recorders won't get Taki's intro, but I'll put some context on the
Just
link
say
for that.
he's a really good dude, and I'm stoked that he's here.
Yeah. Taki's a boss, and that's why I've asked him on here, and he was gracious enough to accept.
Yep.
So I've got a couple of questions about branding. If other people have questions about branding, feel free to throw them in here. But also, I'm hoping this gets a bit away from that at the end as well, because there's other stuff I really want to ask you about. It's a bit broader around marketing.
Okay.
So the first thing is really you are very well known for what you do, like on a worldwide sort of scale. And I guess my first question is, what are some general things we can start with as to how do you get your brand out there? How do you become known for what you do?
Yeah, that's great. So I don't do branding in the way that, if you stopped 100 people in the street and you said, what's branding? They'd probably say it's kind of your colors and your logo and your look. And we do, our stuff looks great because it's, I would hate to have what I think is the world's best, quality stuff in my space and have people dismiss it because it looked crap. So I want to make sure it looks as good as it really is. But in terms of how do you get your name or your brand out there, I've been focused way more on how do I who do I really, really, really want as my ideal client? And then how do I get really deep into what's going on in their head? So what are they, what are their fears and their frustrations and their wants and their aspirations, kind of the full spectrum of what they need. And the way I get famous is just by doing a better job than anyone else of explaining to them what's going on, what their problem is. And I think I've got famous because when I talk about the stuff that's going on for my potential clients, there's a part of them that goes, holy crap, this guy's been following me around. That's exactly what's going on. So I don't really worry too much about getting me out there, but I worry a lot. Dean Jackson said, don't try to get your name out there, try to get their name in here. And when you do the kind of marketing that gets, their name in here, you almost got kind of branding as a byproduct of doing normal, direct response marketing well.
Yeah, and it's a trust and a rapport builder sort of naturally Completely. As well.
I think the other thing that's been really helpful is getting up the courage a few years ago to not hide behind the company brand and put myself on front stage, because people don't connect. I mean, I guess we've got a relationship with Virgin, the company, because we think it's cool and it's fun and it reminds us a bit of Branson, but Branson's a stronger brand. And, I think part of building a brand, at least at the start, it's, people connect with people. So just be yourself, authentic, and kind of turn up who you are to a level 10 volume. And people will either connect with that or not. And if they don't, well, there's not much you can do about it anyway. So just be yourself, in public, whether that's video or podcast like I've done with Shramco.
Yeah. I wanted to dig in more on that because that was actually one of my questions around how do you make the decision? Or it sounds like you did make a conscious decision to put yourself forward as not a full-blown personal brand, I guess, because you still don't operate under sort of TakiMoore.com.
No, I totally don't. Because frankly, no one's looking for me. No one cares about me. I think the sooner you realize that nobody wants you, they want an outcome and they kind of have to go through you to get what they want. And if they could do it without you, they would in a heartbeat. So you're I feel like I'm a necessary evil. And if my clients could do it without, seriously, if they could do it without me, they would, but they can't. So they go through me and I help them get there faster.
Right.
So the focus is never on personal brand. Look how great I am, glory shots of me doing this or that. I don't care about that. I just care about how quickly can I show up, be valuable. And the quicker I can show up and be valuable, the quicker I earn. Brand is really how people feel about you, I think.
Yeah. I have another sort of somewhat related question. Another thing I notice about everything you do is you're very well connected. And I don't know if you necessarily deliberately seek out sort of like influencer relationships or things like that, or if that's like a branding decision where you're like, I want to be associated with these people, or are these guys just your mates, or is that like a deliberate branding decision?
No, it's not a deliberate branding decision. They're mates. Sometimes, I remember a couple of years ago, I made a list of people I'd love to kind of get to know and become friends with, but it was about friends. It wasn't about what could they do for my business.
Yeah.
I was really lucky. I was part of Dan Sullivan's strategic coach program for a year or two. And Dan just wrote a little, blurb for my book, which I got back yesterday, which I'm stoked about, but that wasn't, I'm stoked. But I'm mates with you and Shramco and a bunch of really cool cats. And it's not because I want their brands to rub off on me. I like hanging out with cool people. And, you know, when you're doing the kind of work that we do, it's really good to have a crew of other people who have kind of done some stuff ahead of you that they can help you and you can help them back. One of the things I really like about the kind of business that we're in is people who the rest of the world might see as competitive can be really great friends, teammates, collaborators if you just, you know, if you're open to it. Like James Schramko and I run this podcast, salesmarketingprofit.com. You know, he runs a coaching group. I run a coaching group. You know, there's not a lot of overlap between target markets, but there's probably a little bit. There's some guys who might go either way. But I mean, the truth is, he said it really well. He said that we're like a catamaran with two hulls going in similar directions and we don't cross paths.
That sounds a lot like what James would say.
That's exactly what James would say. Yeah, sorry, cool. I forgot the question. That's the other bad part about.
No, I'm curious about the influencer stuff. I guess it's getting a little bit off topic if it's not like a deliberate branding thing, but I am curious about the list you mentioned, because I noticed a lot of the guys who are in the sort of the online marketing world, the guys that end up sticking around and doing well over the long term are the ones that form these relationships. So did you have a particular approach for doing that, or you just, you know, you wrote their names down and that was it, or?
No, so I think there's two parts to it. I think the people who do well tend to, unless you're a raging introvert and just don't need it, but like I'm, you know, super social and I suck by myself and I'm good in a collaboration. And so part of how it's worked for me is I'm a big believer in just-in-time learning, not just-in-case learning. So like I don't want to learn stuff just in case it's ever useful. But if I reached out to you a few months ago because content marketing was something I really wanted to up my game in. I'm like, who's great at that? Dan. Okay, let's connect. So most of my relationships have come out of what do I need, you know, business or life-wise right now, who's really good, and how can I connect with them? And so, you know, it might be connect, or it could be buy their product and then connect, or it could be just reach out. But I'm not doing it for influence as much as I'm doing it for information. So it's very rare. Like I don't JV very much with people. I don't have them promote me or me promote them. Yeah. But I've got a great network of people who can help me out in a pinch, which I think is really handy.
Cool. All right. I'm going to, if people ask questions in the comments, I'll add them in here, even though they might be a little bit out of whack, but I think this is an interesting branding question. Can you see that on the screen if I accept one?
By Helen?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. This is my first time on Blab, everyone, so forgive my scaredness. And I just don't even know where to look or click. My current startup has my name in it, but I want to grow it as a social media agency. Considering create social media.com's part, would you go with something new? Cool. Yeah, so Helen's asking, should she use hername.com or, you know, because the .com she really wants is taken, and should she go a .social or a .something else? I'm not the best person in the world to ask about, you know, domain names. I know that yourname.com is going to be really valuable and she should grab it. And if you have kids, you should get their domain straight away. .com is the best you can have. .social is okay, but, you know, I wouldn't stress about it too much. Like Basecamp, the project management service I used for years, like they couldn't get basecamp.com because it was taken. They went basecamphq.com. Just, you know, I would say like a .com that is close to what you want is going to be better than a .social, my hunch, but I don't 100% know. Would you agree with that, Dan? You're probably
I'd agree with that. I wouldn't be completely changing brands from a brand strategy to a personal strategy just because the domain's not available.
Agreed. Thanks for backing me up.
So if you don't have your name in your profile, I just won't read it because it's too hard. PC Replays Dublin says, once you become popular, can afford it, you can buy the .com. That actually often happens a lot.
That's exactly what happened. Like there's a domain that I've wanted for 4 years, and it was like, no. And we just reached out and we just bought it, and we're switching over to it in the next few months. But yeah, and back then I couldn't have afforded it, and now I can, so I did it.
Can you tell us what the domain is?
Yeah, milliondollarcoach.com. It's a webinar that we run. It's an event that we run. It's kind of the umbrella brand that we want to switch to.
Yeah, that's a cool domain. So you've been chasing that for a while.
Yeah, ages. And like literally, if you had checked it a couple of months ago, it would have had, like, you'd know that it was registered in like 1990 something. So ages ago by a guy actually I know of. I don't know him personally. And all it said was, this site is coming soon, really, full stop. And like they didn't do anything with it. I was like, come on, man, you're not doing anything with it. Give it to me.
Nice.
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting. I sometimes you can build a name around it. With the Content Machine book that I put out, I found that domain for sale, and it was like $5,000 US, so it wasn't cheap. But I thought that it would be a valuable domain, even if it's like it's a brand that people can sort of.
It's so solid. Yeah,
it's a solid brand. So if it all goes to shit and the book fails, and all I'm left with is that domain, it still kind of made sense for me to buy it.
Just so you know, it's freaking. If anyone's watching this and hasn't read Content Machine, you really should. Like, it was really helpful for me. So thanks.
Oh, no worries. Right, Claim Pop, advice for promoting a disruptor, something new. Is it okay to compare yourself to a successful company in your copy? That's an interesting question. My company is like LegalZoom for insurance.
Yeah, I think even at the presentation you did at Shremko's event, you did a little bit of that. It's, we're like this for that. I think that's a really easy way for people to put you in a mental box. And frankly, branding is partly about helping people to put you in a box. People say, "Oh, I don't want to be in a pigeonhole." Yeah, you actually do. You want to own a little square of somebody's brain. And one way to do that is, we're like Uber for that, or LegalZoom for this. I think that's completely fine.
Yeah, I think you need to become known for something. And that's another thing I noticed with a lot of the guys who are doing good things. They just become known for one thing. And a lot of them, they might know a lot of different things, but there will be one thing that everyone holds on to when they're referring them to someone. And that's why it is sort of important to have something.
Yeah, it's really weird. I didn't do this on purpose, but I became the webinar guy a couple of years ago after I did a talk on, actually at James's event, and it got posted online. And dude, I've been running webinars for like 4 years and doing a whole bunch of other stuff just as well. But I became the webinar guy because that's what people, it's good if people can put you in our box, I guess.
Yeah. I'll get back to my questions if while other people bring their questions in. So I wanted to ask you about your content, because you do a lot of content in various different forms, and we've talked a bit about this before. Yeah. But so what role does content play in you getting your message out?
Yeah, well, so content is basically the whole deal for me. Like, the whole business is, like, if you think about, I do it in my business, but I also help my clients to do three things, to attract and get new leads, to convert and, convert people into paying clients, and then to deliver a coaching or advice-based business, right? That's kind of what I do. And so if you think about the old way that people used to do that, the attract was like knock on doors, cold call, collect cards, network, speak, chase, follow up, really manual. And the sales process was like a one-on-one conversation, again, really labor intensive and really manual. And the actual coaching piece was, time for money, hours, really manual. And so if you think about, that, I call that coaching business, 1.0, and it's built on your time and your effort, and you don't have a limitless supply. So it's hard to scale. And so what I do in my work, and this will kind of come back to answering the question, is I help people still attract and convert, deliver, but in a more leveraged way. And so instead of manual prospecting, it's automated marketing. So we'll come back in a second.
Yeah.
Instead of converting, with one-on-one conversations, we do it with webinars and events. And instead of delivering one-on-one time for money, we can deliver something leveraged and scalable. And so you think about, well, if time and effort are the two ingredients which go into doing it the old way, what are the two ingredients that go into doing it the new way? And there's only two. You need content and systems. And so how can you automate your marketing if you don't have content to send? You can't. You can't build an autoresponder with no content. You need systems as well. How can you sell on a webinar with no IP, no content? You can't. How can you deliver a group coaching program? Like in one-on-one coaching, and goes, "Hey, Dan, great to have you here today. What do you need most right now?" And I can just respond to you. But if I'm teaching a group, I need to lead with content. So content is basically, my whole world is a content business. It's how we attract and how we convert and how we deliver. And happy to talk heaps about it. Whatever specifics you'd like to get into. It's like it's everything, and I'm happy to chat.
Yeah, let's delve into an example of the sort of content you do, because I know you have a lot of different types of content. You got the podcast, and you do the webinars, and you've got the blog content, and you present in-person workshops. Can you break down maybe one of those? Like, how do you decide to do certain content? How do you leverage it to sell ultimately to get more customers?
Great. So let's talk about how to decide, and then how to make it actually work. It's two ideas. So how do you decide? I think you want to do if you think about it at its most basic, you can do video or audio or text, and you want to pick the medium that is easiest for you to do consistently. So I know at WP Curve, you have great long form text articles, presumably written by a team or you or somebody. Yep. And so it's like, what's the best for my audience? But like, frankly, if video is best for your audience and you suck on camera and are terrified, don't do video. Do something that's easy, right? The reason that Shremko and I do a audio podcast is because audio is just like, I hate writing. I don't write anything in my world. I either talk in front of a camera or I talk, in a microphone, and that's that. So how do you know what to create? Do the one that flows the easiest, and you'll find your tribe. I think is probably the easiest answer.
I think that's a great answer too, especially just the focus on the consistency, because it's easy to get excited about new platforms and new ways of doing things, or just following, someone else does video, so you do video. But if you can't do it well and do it consistently, it's just not going to work.
Yeah.
I've got a question here from Roscoe. Sorry, keep going.
No, that's okay. I know Roscoe. He's a really good dude, so I'm happy to pause my flow and get into the Roscoe training.
Yeah, no, I probably should have asked this before, but his question was, what do you think is going to disrupt the coaching industry in the next 5 years?
Oh, dude, I don't think like that. I'm really sorry. I think what wins, here's what's disrupting it right now. The old school marketing ploy of, hype, promise, hype is getting completely overshadowed by dudes who bring actual real value. So that's what's disrupting it right now. What might disrupt it in the future? Maybe an app or some kind of technology, but frankly, there's always going to be a need for somebody with a problem to meet someone with a solution and connect the two together. So I think you're pretty safe, dude.
Yeah. Good.
By the way, I'm not a futurist. I'm a nowist. So, my main question, is how can I turn this into money by Thursday is kind of the question that goes on in my brain. I'm not too worried about forever. There's just too much fun to have right now.
I'm with you as well. I always, whenever people ask me questions like that, I'm like, I don't know. I can barely predict next week. So
yeah, seriously.
But that's a really good point. I think a lot. It's not just the coaching industry. A lot of industry, this is happening now. It's it's not just people who can sell shit. It's people who can build a lot of trust, add a lot of value, and then have something that makes sense after the end of all of that value is given. Have something that makes sense that people are going to want to buy from you, and that is disruption at the moment. Yep,
completely right.
Roscoe, so
kudos. Great question. Sorry, I had to answer.
All right. So Laney says, I hate writing too, Taki Moore. Well, I like writing, but do what works.
Yeah. So if you're a writer, then write. It's an incredible asset. And no piece of content is more valuable than the others. The benefit of writing is you can read long form really fast. It's amazing. It's way more portable. But if you happen to suck at writing, then do what you can do consistently well. So we were kind of talking about two things here. How do you choose what medium to use? And I reckon consistency and, more than competence. The one that allows you to fully express best is probably great.
Yeah.
And then the second piece was how do you make it pay? And so there's two ways to think. You can talk about the actual technical nuts and bolts of how you syndicate and where you send it. And you are tons better at that than me. The thing I think that I'm really good at is a few years ago, I realized that the line between marketing on the one hand and content on the other has blurred. So if you think about in the old days, you'd have the newspaper and the ads, and then they made advertorial. And then you'd have TV and ads, and they had infomercials. Yeah, and then they had movies and the ads, and then they had product placement.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I think the secret is how do you deliver content that influences and marketing that feels like value, because it is. And if you can get that, then no matter what medium you do it in, you're doing that's been my secret, right? Everything I do is about how do I get people to take action. If it's with clients, it's about how to take action and implement the stuff. And it's with prospects, it's how do I take action and start. And so I want to teach incredible, knock your socks off, world-class stuff that has people go, holy crap, I want more.
Yeah. I might ask a follow-up question on that. How do you decide? How do you decide when you cut it off for more? How do you decide how much value to give on the free? And, there's obviously is there a big leap between free and, a couple of $1,000s to attend a workshop, or is there a few monetization things in between that help that gap?
No, I don't think you need as many levels as people think. People are willing to take big jumps. So I run I run a blog and a podcast and all that free stuff. I run a 2-day workshop that is, depending on when people buy, it can be as cheap as $200 or $100. It's 2 days and it's insane. You would pay, $3 to $5 grand for it and walk away going, holy crap, I got more than my money's worth at $3 to $5 grand, and I charge $200 for it, right? At the end of that, I just go, hey, dude, if you like this, you want to do some work with me inside Black Belt, then really happy to help. And here's how that works. And the price point is significantly different to $100 or $200. It's 15 to 20, 25 grand. So the levels don't have to be as close as we think. And so I'm not a big believer in something free, something cheap, something a little bit more expensive, something, I just think amazing world-class free, something super premium, and maybe one thing in the middle if you want. Yeah?
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
At least that's been my strategy.
Yeah, and it's obviously working well for you.
Yeah.
I've got a question here from Manjit. When you first started, how did you go about getting customers and interest in your business? Did you use content from the start?
Yes, but not in the same way. So you need, the way I started was I found, it goes back to your influencer question before, who else has already got the customers I want? How can I connect with them? And so I just had a simple 2 or 3 email conversation, like a snippet, send hey, Dan, you and I haven't met yet, but we both work with coaches. We're not competitive in any way. I'd really love to, get to know you and see if there's anything I can do to help. Would you be up for a quick chat sometime? And they say, yep. Okay, great. Then the next, another email, and then we book in a conversation and we talk. And my job on that talk is 80%, how can I help Dan? And 20%, maybe there's a webinar that we could do sometime in the next few months together. Yeah. And so I used content because, the webinar that I would do, for your audience would be content super heavy. But I didn't have a blog and content. It was all, relationship and then promoting my content, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
That's how I started.
I've got another question here specific to, so I'm jumping around all over the place, but I figured that's okay for you. So I'm going to just keep doing that. Let me know if that's not okay.
No, it's fine. My brain is all over the place all the time, so I'm totally cool with it.
So I've got a question. Coaching, to my experience, based on what happens in the moment, how do you transfer this towards content?
Okay, cool. So permission to play, really interesting question. And I'm going to give, I think one of my skills is to simplify the complex. So if this feels overly simplistic, please forgive me, but I think it'll help everyone kind of get it. In order to switch from, actually, let's do this. Let's say if you looked at, if you've got a niche, or a specific sort of problem that you solve, or work you do with a specific kind of person, if you look at the last, 10 or 20 clients you've helped, I bet that there are some common themes, some common problems they had, maybe some common goals they had, maybe some common actions that you took. And so if you wanted to turn that into a group coaching program, or even if you still wanted to coach one-on-one, but you wanted your marketing to teach people to want your coaching, then what you want to do is get clear on 3 things. And this is where content comes into play. You need to get really clear about, number 1, what their problem is. Okay, so the best marketer, the one who wins, is the one who can do a better job than anyone else of articulating people's problems. Paraphrasing a dude called Wyatt Woodsmore. So problem first. Secondly, what's the promise that they really want? What's the outcome that they want? What's the goal that they want, and why? So there's 2 pieces of content you've got already. You can create content around the problems people have. You can create content about the results or the promises people want. But if you've got problem and promise, the only thing that connects the 2 is your process. What are the common steps that you use to help people get the outcome they want? And so if you break down the last 10 or 20 or whatever it is clients you've worked with, and you look at it from, okay, if I had to teach a group of 100 people with this problem to get that promise without one-on-one interaction, but if for some reason I wasn't allowed to talk to one, I could only talk to a group, hands tied behind my back, what would be the steps to get somebody from here to here in this most streamlined way? And that's where the need for content comes in. Both marketing-wise and sales-wise, and then obviously when you're delivering a program. Does that help a little bit?
I think that's a great answer. I wonder if the assumption he's making there is might actually not be correct. It might be the case that a lot of people's problems have something in common, and they're not specific to their situation.
Yeah, I think it also comes down to I don't want to know how nitpicky we want to get around definition of coaching. There's a really traditional, if you ask a purist, they would say that coaches, the answer is always in the client, and the coach asks questions but does not deliver content. And I don't subscribe to that model. I think that's a little bit limiting. Let's say, Dan, that you're an expert in content marketing and I desperately need to know it. And I come to you and I say, hey, Dan, I really need to know this. And because of your purist upbringing, I'm not allowed to teach you stuff, but I can only ask you questions. So you ask me questions, and after 6 weeks, I sort of finally get it. That's not good coaching. That's just mean.
No.
Because you could have just said, hey, Taki, this will get you started. Boom. And now I can get a result. It's not about methodology. It's about outcome. And the outcome is help a client. So whether it's coaching or consulting, I don't think that matters. So maybe that's part of permission to play's question. It could be wrong, but that's an idea.
That's good. Thanks to learn, test, convert for summarizing that in the comments. That's really helpful. If Taki mentions a URL, he's already mentioned a couple of people and some links or anything he's working on. If you can throw those in the comments, that's great. There's too much for me to do to be able to do that myself, so that's really helpful.
Awesome.
There's another question about content here. This is a good one. Are you always following a specific plan in your podcast, or are you improvising most of the time?
Awesome. Okay, I want you to write down 4 words. I think it's 4 words. We'll find out in a second. Here's the golden rule for everything I do content-wise. Like if you're going to do something more than once, for goodness sake, don't improv. It's too hard. Like a blank page is really hard. Like a blank whiteboard or a blank screen is really hard. What you want are, at least my secret has been to, instead of having like one big empty page, is to create lots of little boxes and then just fill each little box. So the 4 words that I want you to think about with every piece of content you create is to freestyle in a framework. And so what I do for my podcasts, Alexi,
it is, yeah.
Alexi, sorry about my pronunciation, is I've got a framework. Every single podcast is identical. The subject is different, but the format is identical. And so I'm happy to talk through, the podcast framework if that's helpful. But like every webinar I deliver, like I'm making one for tomorrow, finishing one off this afternoon. The structure of every single webinar I run is identical. Identical. The content and the topic is completely different, but you could say, hey, Taki, can you run a webinar in half an hour about X, including slides? And I could pull it off easily because I've got a framework I can just pour my content into. So I can freestyle within the set little boxes. Yeah?
Yeah.
So like I just wrote a book late last year, and I did it in 3 webinars. It took me like 5 hours, and there's 44,000 words. Yeah, it is. It's really, but what's cool about it is that it was really easy for me to do because I made a worksheet called the Book Builder, and every chapter is 1 page, and it's just got 9 things I wanted in every chapter in the right order, and I just scribbled on them, and then I was able to just talk that for the 5 hours, and that was the 9 chapters which are structured perfectly, exactly how I wanted, because I wasn't just kind of making crap up. I was doing it inside a framework.
That's a really good answer, particularly because we were talking about podcasting the other day, and Michael O'Neill was sort of saying, it's got to be free form, and he was saying like the podcasts that are strictly based around, a really rigid sort of format, are just, people just get burnt out on them. But there was, I think, having something in between is really powerful.
Yeah, and I could never read a script. I would find that really hard. So when I shoot my videos down at the beach, for the blog, they're not scripted, but they're structured. There are 6 things that every 3-minute video does. Yeah. In this order, and so I just, I do 2 of them at a time, and I just pick, whatever my topic is. I can look at the camera and do the opening 10 seconds. That's things number 1 and 2, and then I just pause and I look down. Okay, cool, and I can, teach and seed. That's things 3 and 4, and then I can, look down at my notes again and figure out the wrap up and the call to action. But the structure is the same. The content's different every time, so it looks like art, but it's built like science.
Yeah, tweetable. Do you have a URL you can send people to, before I forget, to delve more into these frameworks, like the podcasting framework and stuff like that?
Yeah, totally. The best place to find me and a whole bunch of this stuff, some of it taught explicitly and some of it, examples shown by me teaching content, is coachmarketingmachine.com. And if people go there, you'll see a bunch of videos, both excerpted from webinars, videos of me live in an audience, or just kind of in front of a camera, and you'll see a bunch of these frameworks taught. I teach a bunch of them at this live event I do called the $1 Million Coach Intensive, so that might be worth looking at for if you live, if you can fly to Sydney from where you are or fly to Santa Monica near LA, then that'd be, that's where I teach a ton of them in 2 days.
Yeah. So if you've got more time, I don't want to wrap up either. I just wanted to get that in there so I didn't forget. Do you have a little bit more time?
Dude, I'm free for as long as you need me, so it's cool. So until I run out of water, and it's really hot today in Sydney.
No worries. If someone can bring the link up for that event, and
$1,000,000coachintensive.com is the link for the site. Is the link for the event.
Perfect. Yeah, if someone can put that in the comments. I'm going to see if I can get Dhruv in here on the mix. He's been waiting for a while, so hopefully this works.
No, it's fine.
How are you, man?
Yeah, I'm very good.
Hey, we can bring in guests. This is awesome.
Oh, yeah.
Hey, Dhruv.
So, hey, how are you?
Awesome. Where are you?
Yeah, cool. I'm in London.
Lovely.
Yeah, we were sailing actually in Sydney and then Whitsundays. So we are doing the Clipper race. So now they're sailing from Sydney Hobart and Hobart to Whitsundays and now on the way to Da Nang, Vietnam. So yeah. But anyway.
Incredible. I was just in the Whitsundays last week. It's gorgeous there.
It's awesome there. Yeah, I saw the pictures. Okay, so I'm trying to start this startup that's actually a marketplace for children's sports instructors. So basically, parents can pay a monthly fee and get 4 sessions of personal instructors for the kids. Can be yoga, can be Pilates, or anything like that. Mm-hmm. So in terms of getting more clients or more parents and kids to sign up, I was thinking of approaching doing content marketing. So if you to do the content marketing for this idea, what is the most important thing do you think I should focus on right now?
So if I was thinking about content marketing, I would do. I've got 2 ideas. I always do. So I'll tell you both.
Yeah.
I'm just going to loop back to something we talked about before, which is problem, promise, and process. So I'd create content about those 3 things. That's the first thing I'd do.
Okay.
The second thing is, frankly, if I was going to do this, the first thing I would do probably wouldn't be content marketing. Like I would use content, but the first thing I'd do is I'd find people who are already in the space and deliver content marketing through them because they've already got the audience. Yeah, that's the That's
yeah, got it. All right, good. That's perfect. Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Great. Yeah. Cool. Thank you.
All right, man.
Enjoy the sun in Sydney, man. It's so
cold.
Dude.
Here. What are you doing in London? By the way, I've got this rule that anyone over 18 can't complain about the weather where they live because they're old enough to move. So if it gets crap, just remember that you're responsible for that, and you should.
Switch. Yeah. Thanks for sure.
All right. See you later.
Thanks,
Dhruv.
Thanks.
So the other guys with the questions, I'm going to prioritize them on the ones who can call in because it's a little bit more fun.
At Big Deal SEO, it's problem, promise, and process, or process if you're in the US.
Alexi, what's up?
Hi guys.
Dude. Alexi, can I just start by apologizing for butchering the pronunciation of your name?
It was 99% right.
No, the 1% was pretty average. How can I help?
So basically, maybe last month or 2 ago, I read a book on personal development. It's called Miracle Morning.
Oh yeah.
Do you have? I mean, you mentioned that you sort of coach, or you're dealing with coaches. Yeah. Like personal development coaches. What is your opinion on this book?
I've read it. I'm pretty sure I've read it. Is it the one about morning rituals?
Yeah.
This one. Okay, cool. So I think I've read the book. It sounds like something I read last year. I think morning rituals are awesome. Anything that I remember hearing Tim Ferriss say something pretty epic. He said he designs the first hour of his day in so much detail that he could give the script to an actor and they could pull it off almost flawlessly. I think that's pretty amazing. Tim's a little obsessive like that. Maybe that's not your style.
That's like something Tim Ferriss would say.
Yeah, totally. That's something Tim Ferriss would say. So I did. I created the morning ritual for me, and all I started with was, what are the ideal ingredients? Like, what are some things that you would go into a great morning? Not every morning, but like a great morning. And so I was like, okay, well, I'd catch up with friends. I'd drop the kids off to school. I'd have breakfast with Kiri Marie, my wife. This is like all of the things I'd love to do. I'd love to get down the beach, go get barefoot, and maybe jump in the water if it's warm enough. Yeah, in Sydney, it's warm enough most of the time, but not all the time. Go to the gym and kind of sweat. So there was a list of ingredients. One of them was figure out the 3 things I wanted to do that day and be grateful for the day so far. And just made a list of all of the ideal ingredients, and I chunked them into 4 kind of categories. Some of them were about physical and some of them was kind of social. And so I kind of chunked them together, and then I put them into an order. And and then I just kind of made that my ritual. So I'd wake up, shoes on, straight down to the gym, do that, go to the beach, have a walk, have a swim, I don't know about the book, but I think the idea of having a morning ritual is awesome. You feel $1 million when you start your day, right? That's for sure.
Okay, great. Thanks for answer. And my next question. So basically, English is not it's my second sort of language. It's not. I mean, it's not native for me.
That's okay.
And I just could you give any tips? How can I be more fluent? And how can I get better in my English sort of?
For what purpose? Why?
To get better talking with people. For example, if I
practice it, man. I know it's a really crappy answer, but the more you talk to people, the easier it's going to get. What I would say is, if you've got the resources to do it, fly yourself to a country where they don't speak your language and marinate in it. I speak pretty fluent Portuguese because I lived in Brazil when I was 17 for a year, chasing a girl. Long story, don't need to go there. But my Portuguese got amazingly good because nobody spoke English.
Okay. So basically, like you're saying, only practice will help, so nothing else, isn't it?
Well, I don't know, man. Maybe
Move
somebody's got move to Sydney.
Yeah,
that seems to be the answer to most things.
I'm in Sydney.
All right.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, there you go.
I think you already followed my advice. All it is, mate, is just.
Cool.
I think you're doing great. That was a curveball I didn't see coming.
Thanks, man.
So you followed both of my pieces of advice. You practice more and move to Sydney. Done that. Okay, crap. What next?
Thanks. Thanks for the time.
No, that's okay. Last thing, just realize that accents are sexy.
Uh-huh.
You don't want to talk like an Aussie. How many Aussies can pull off the Alexi? Hello, people. It's Alexi. You will like me very much. It's awesome. You should totally do that. Be yourself.
Thanks for the advice.
All right, cool. Thanks, Alexi. I've got a couple of book recommendations, Influence, and there's another one there. I think The Power of Habit. I haven't read either of those books. I'm not much of a big book person, but
yeah, I'm a big reader. I've read Influence, Power of Habit. Probably a great book. I found it a bit dense and skipped, but dude, yeah, I think that's great. Thank you.
Is Influence the Cialdini?
Yeah, Influence is Cialdini. I read it years ago. I think he's written a new shorter one, maybe called Yes or something like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if it wasn't written by an Aussie, it'd be called Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, Influence is one of those books where I haven't actually read the original book, but the concepts from that book come up in so much sales and marketing, online marketing stuff.
It's hard to avoid.
So here's a question from Laney. Do you think having that framework, this might be from a little while ago, but having that framework helps to strengthen your brand, meet your clients' expectations? Yeah,
it completely does. Because it allows you to be, I'll take ownership for it. It allows me to be world-class without really trying. Okay, because I've got a framework, I can pour my stuff in. I know it's going to come out epic every single time without me obsessing or doing 17 takes. I could just do it first. It totally allows me to be consistent, and clients love consistency.
Yeah, I think if you can reduce that friction as well, for a lot of people doing content it's that friction. It's I want to do it, but there's 3 or 4 things that I need to think about before I do it, and that's enough to make me not do it. Right.
Yeah, exactly right. Whereas if all you have to do is I'm doing a case study interview with a client tomorrow. I've got a case study framework that I use. And so I talked to him yesterday for 5 minutes or 10 minutes to set the thing up. And the first thing I do is I just whip out my case study builder page that I built for myself. And I just talked through the questions, and now it's ready to go. It's going to be an hour's worth of amazing with that much effort. Whereas most people do that much effort and it comes out, okay.
Yeah. Okay, I've got a couple of more of my own questions and questions from a few of my mates who wanted to ask you some questions. Mutual friends probably is a better way to say it. This is one from my buddy Paul. Do you have a criteria for saying yes to interview requests to protect your brand? I assume you mean either saying yes or saying no.
Yeah.
How do you decide?
So I'm happy to talk to do interviews. I think part of it's about protecting your brand and part of it's about protecting your time. And so I know, Dan, when I first saw you a year or 2 ago, I was I'll say yes to every podcast, but there's a time when that's a little bit unsustainable. And so now I'm looking for, if I've already got a connection with someone, that's going to help. If they've already got the audience that I want, that's going to help. If they're a friend, even if it's not my audience, I'll help because they're buddies, right? And in terms of protecting my brand, dude, it's a business rule, not an interview rule. It's like, just don't work with dickheads.
Yep.
If someone's got a bad reputation, steer clear. There's a bunch of people who are huge opportunities for me that I don't do work with just because we don't jive. So it's more about the rule of thumb I have is like, would I have this person over for dinner at my house in front of the kids? And if I wouldn't, let's not do it.
Perfect. Yeah, I've sort of hit that level with podcasts where I did so many of them. I just had to start saying no, and then I had to start thinking which ones I say yes to. But those guidelines are good. I mean, if a friend asks me, I'm going to say yes. If it's a good person and they've got a good audience, I'm going to say yes.
Yeah, and if it's not a friend and they're not a good person and they don't have an audience, you're more likely to say no.
Yeah. There's another good one here. Oh, this one. What happened to that question? It wasn't it was a Q / instead of a / Q, which means it didn't come up on the left, which is just a weird blab thing. But it was a good one. You share so many frameworks and techniques in your content. How do you choose which ones to decide to use and when?
I wonder if they mean which ones do I decide to share, or which ones how do I know which one to use? The answer to which one to use is really easy because there's one framework for each thing. So if I got to build a webinar, I've got a thing for that. If I need to promote a webinar, I've got a framework for that. If I need to do a podcast, I've got a framework for that. So pretty much I've got like one go-to tool for each problem.
Yeah.
I've got a set of screwdrivers and wrenches and hammers, and each one does one job. How do I know which one to share? Dude, I'm really generous. I feel like I'm really generous with the frameworks I teach. And I learned this from a guy called, what's his name? Justin Rothmarsh, Aussie guy. He wrote a book called The Machine, sales process engineering guy. And I interviewed him years and years ago, and he said this thing. He said, when you give freely of your information, you earn the right to charge a premium for implementation. And so I'm really happy to share not all my stuff, but like heaps of my stuff, because I know that most people aren't looking for crap. I can do this, now I can do it all myself. They're looking for a guide. And now I found someone who obviously knows what they're talking about. I trust them to help me on the journey. And that's how I feel about it.
Perfect. All right. I've got a couple of my own I'll get to. So you have to guess who asked.
I'm happy to help. Yeah, it's fine.
You have to guess who wanted this question. It is, where does a coach's coach get coaching?
Where does a coach's coach get coaching? Great question. I think I get coaching from 3 places. In the last 2 years, I've had 3 coaches who I've teamed up with when I wanted to up my game. Some of them have been in a specific area, and some of them have been a bit more general, mostly around personal effectiveness, making decisions quickly, and execution more than strategy. I think I'm fairly good there. So find someone who fills the need that you've got is the short answer. And so I felt like I wanted to step it up and just get a sounding board. So that's one answer. Secondly, I get coaching from, I don't know if you call it coaching, maybe it's training or input. If I have a specific thing I want to get good at, I'll do whatever I can to find out who's the best in it and buy their stuff, and then create a relationship and get influence that way. And thirdly, the best and least comfortable coach I've got is someone I married about 16 years ago. And every Tuesday morning, Kerry Marie and I have a meeting, and I get a sheet of paper out and I just create 9 boxes because it's just easy. And then I put in 9 things that I haven't got a clue what to do with this week. And we talk for 45 minutes. At the end of it, everyone's got like an outcome and an action plan. And I just go, and I'm happy as Larry, and I can just go do what I'm told.
Nice.
Yeah, I think a big strategy for me has been having a boss. And so I've got a virtual assistant called Angel who every Friday afternoon I plan out next week. I'm completely disorganized without it. And if we ever miss a Friday, my next week is crappy. But having a boss, it's less about coaching and probably more about helping me with implementation is really where I struggle. Yeah.
And if you're ever going to try and get a meeting in Taki's calendar, you're going to have to go through his VA.
Because I'm banned from the calendar because I screw it up. I've got read-only access. And, well, dude, like last year I booked one appointment or a couple of appointments myself, and I found myself in mid-June triple booked to speak at 3 conferences on one day in 3 different countries. It's just like, dude, only I could pull it. Yes, that's not good. It's better if somebody else manages it so I don't let people down.
Good advice. All right, Kevin, what do you say to yourself, internal or external, when you run into a problem or obstacle in your business? Curious, your internal dialogue.
Oh, I don't think I've got too many mindset tricks, dude. What I've got is frameworks that help me think stuff through. So my go-to is, I've got two things I do. The main thing I do is, who can I talk this through with? And so I've got people in my team who are just smart cats. And so I'll go, hey, Steve, or hey, Mike, or hey, Kerry Marie, or hey, whoever, I've got this thing. Can I chat it through with you? Or I'll jump on the phone with a friend. So I'm quite external. I usually think better when I'm verbalizing. It's just kind of how my brain works. So usually I'm like a phone call away from, that's why I got so many great friends, because I need them all the time, because I'm incapable of getting anywhere by myself. So that's the first thing. Second thing is an idea that I learned from Dan Sullivan, and he's got this tool called it's called VOTA, V-O-T-A, and it's basically, imagine a worksheet with 4 columns. Vision is like, what do you want? Obstacles is what's in the way. Transformation, you just look at each of the obstacles and go, well, how could I flip that? And then A is for action plan, and I find that really useful as anything I can get it out. Like, internal dialogue is messy for me. I need it to be outside me, or I get quite overwhelmed. So I wouldn't think about internal dialogue. I'd think about how can I get it out of me and either have my eyes on it or somebody else's eyes on it with me. Very cool.
Okay. I've got another question from Shramko that he asks, this is an interesting one. What is the most likely reason a student will fail or succeed?
Yeah, I got 3. They're really simple, because every client who comes in, we give them what we call the 3 quicks. And to 95%, we found that if they can do these 3 things, they will succeed, 95% guaranteed. And if they don't, I can almost 100% guarantee they won't. And so when somebody comes in, we make them sign an agreement, part of which is the 3 quicks. And so they've got to be quick to implement. We can talk about that. Quick to ask for help, and quick to share. And it would kill me if, there's no point learning. We talked about just in time versus just in case earlier. There's no point learning stuff just in case you ever use it in the future. Your brain is better used for chewing on problems, and you've got the internet for storing stuff. You don't need to collect stuff for later. So quick to implement. I've got a couple of different clients who do it differently. I've got a client, Simon, who's got the 48-hour rule, which from the moment he hears something from me and decides I'm going to do that, he's got 48 hours to have it launched in the world. It's never going to be perfect, but done is way better than perfect, right? I've got another client, Lawrence, whose rule is before he comes back to the next conference, it's got to be finished. So his quick to implement is more like 3 months. It's a bit lame, but it gets done, right? And then I've got Trisha, who sits in my workshops firing off text messages under the table. And and I was like, what are you doing? She goes, I'm just barking off orders to my team, and it's done literally in real time while she's there. So quick to implement is going to help you win. Number 2, quick to ask for help. It would kill me if a client got stuck and I only found out about it 3 months later. Dude, me and my team are here to help. We've got a whole bunch of support structures put in place. All you got to do is raise a hand and say, hey, I'm struggling with this, and we can jump in. So if they don't ask for help, I guarantee you're going to get stuck somewhere. And the third thing is not being quick to share. And you want to be, I want my clients to share the wins and the lessons. When something goes well, we celebrate, and we also want to know, well, what made that happen? If something doesn't go well, how do we go off track so we can help each other out? So I think they're the 3.
And with the share, is that about helping other people?
Correct.
Or is it also about reinforcing for them? If they share it, it's going to make it more ingrained for them.
Yeah, I think that's 100% true. But for me, it's a side benefit. I want to build a tribe of people who help each other out. And that happens when we're open with what's working and what's not. And so dropping the mask and not trying to pretend like you've got everything perfect, which none of us do, I think is really cool. So that, if you take the mask off and you're just real, you're much more able to receive from me and from my team and from the other people in the group.
Perfect. Okay. I had another question from my buddy Nathan Chan, who's also coming on the 7-Day Startup Challenge on the weekend. So you missed the weekend session, but James and Nathan are both coming on the weekend. So
James texted me this morning saying I threw in some curly questions. So thanks, James. I really love you and appreciate you so much.
So Nathan wants to talk about webinars, and maybe we'll just, if we've got 5 more minutes, we'll talk about webinars, because I know you, like you said before, you got quite good at it, and I imagine you found someone who was good at it and learned from them or learned from something.
Yeah, totally.
His question is specific around like conversion rates for cold traffic and stuff like that, like from Facebook. But before I get to that, how did it start for you with webinars? How did you learn how to get good at them, and how do you approach it?
Yeah. So it started when a mate of mine, Grant, put me in touch with my first ever joint venture person, who I met at the Western Hotel in Sydney. I was a complete beginner, very, very low budget. I met this guy in the foyer there, and I bought him I had a chicken sandwich, and I bought him a pot of tea, and the bill was $46. And I was like, dude, I'm totally never eating at the Western ever again. Anyway, he agreed to run. It wasn't a webinar; it was a tele-seminar, like a Tuesday morning group conference call. And that was my first experience of sort of group selling. And I didn't have a website or a way to collect money or anything. It was all very, very manual. And so in preparing for that, I was like, well, I don't know. It was going to be an interview because I thought that was easier, just like we're doing right now. I can kind of riff and respond. But he didn't really know me, so he wouldn't know what to ask. So the framework I used then was, what are my 7 best client case study wins? Secondly, what's the question I could get them to ask which would allow me to, accidentally, oh, by the way, drop those 7 stories?
Yep.
And so I gave him, an intro question, a wrap-up question, and 7 in-between questions, and that was the framework at the start, which allowed me to, I think, like selling with case studies is just really powerful, because if I go, hey, I'm Taki Moore, I'm so great, especially here in Australia, everyone just goes, bullcrap, man, like you're full of yourself, right? And so instead of putting the spotlight on me, if I can put the spotlight on a client and make them the king, then I become the kingmaker, which is great positioning for me without really having to talk about myself at all. So that's been a big part of my focus for years and years and years. In terms of webinar framework right now, let's do 6 steps in 60 seconds. Is that okay?
Perfect.
All right, if we can. Stopwatch. So in chronological order, a webinar's got 6 steps if you want to do a webinar to sell. It starts with the opening, which is where you get people's attention, you create connection with them, you get permission for how you're going to do it, and you so they're the first 3. Then we've got retention, which is like, so the second piece is the stick strategy. How do we get people to stay on the webinar right to the end when you make your offer? So there's a stick strategy. Third is the bulk of your webinar is the stretch, which is where you're teaching great content. You've probably got time to teach 3 pieces of content for 10 to 15 minutes each in an hour or 70-minute webinar. And you've got to teach content that sets up the sale, that gives you the chance to show proof, that keeps people engaged, and that is perceived as valuable. So that's the first 3. Then we've got the transition, where you're transitioning from the content into the close or the offer in a way that's really smooth and seamless. Then we've got the offer itself, which is obviously where you say, here's what I've got, and here's what I'll do for you, and here's how to get it. And then after you've made your call to action, finally, we've got the party, which is, when you open up for Q&A and you welcome the people who've just bought and say, congratulations, Dan, really excited about working with you. You tell them what's going to happen next, so they're all excited about what's going to happen. And everyone who didn't buy now feels a little bit jealous, like they're missing out, because they are. And then you open up for Q&A, and you're basically just answering the, hey, this sounds really interesting, but I just don't know if it's right for me or not questions. And that's 6 steps to a webinar in like a minute and a little bit. Is that okay?
Awesome. Well, all I can say is thank God we got a replay. My brain's exploding. Can I dig into that?
Yeah, normally it's 2 days. So that was
right.
that was quick. So,
someone just said, what is step 1? I'm just going to just call you guys, and you guys can watch the replay. And if someone is super keen,
actually, dude, honestly, if you want to learn how to do webinars, if you just Google Taki Moore webinar, the top link, you can click that, and it's got 70 minutes on how to do an absolute killer webinar, step by step by step. Just Google Taki Moore webinar. I'm sure you'll find. I think it's the top link.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to try one more call in, and then I'll let you go if this one works.
Sure. I'm here to help, dude. So whatever I can do.
Brenton.
Hey guys, how you going?
Hey man, what's up?
G'day, Brenton.
Hey. Mate, I just had a quick follow-up question on my one from before about your frameworks and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Mate, you're just sharing, frameworks all the time on the podcast or on your
videos and whatever.
And that kind of stuff.
Yep.
You've got so many of them.
Yeah.
Do you have a framework for coming up with the frameworks? Because
yeah, I totally. Mate, of course I do.
So spot on, and there's so many of them.
Yeah, of course I do. So rather than describe it like a framework, let me give you the steps. And it's really simple. This kind of way of thinking, it's not normal to me. It's like it's learned. But I love having a recipe to follow. And so how it really started was when I started to coach and run workshops, I needed a workbook. And the workbook is full of like worksheets with exercise. So when I teach it, it's a framework. When you see it, it looks like a worksheet is probably the easiest way to think about this. Right? Okay. So the fact that I had to put it into boxes on a page is what taught me to think in steps and boxes. Yeah. And so if you go, like, what's one framework that you'd want to have?
Awesome. So, okay. One for working out a client attraction method for a client. So telling them, helping them work out which method of marketing to use. Great.
Okay, cool. So give me some steps, dude. Like if that's me and you need to teach me how to work out which steps to use, what would you do with me? Just kind of take me through what would you do first and second and third?
Yeah, cool. So first thing that I would do, working with a client on this kind of thing, would be to help them identify probably who it is they're trying to reach.
Yep.
I mean, that's
perfect.
Pretty much the first thing.
Yep. Great. Give me step 2.
Step 2 is then identifying problems that that person has or questions that they have, maybe whether that's to do with a buying stage or
Got it. Sorry, I'm going to cut you off just because we're running Dan's show here and I don't want it to take an hour. Give us like 2 or 3 more steps real quick.
Yeah, cool. And then base that on, basically see if there's some content that could come out of that from those questions.
Yep.
And then I guess it would then turn into, okay, how is that going to be presented and to whom in which channels?
Yeah, okay. So package and channels. Right. So what I've done,
work out exactly where the funnel's going to end.
Yeah, I understand. And so funnel. Now, what we've done is pretty high level. So you could go, who were I working with? And if you had a worksheet which had all of these things on it, you'd get, a millimeter deep and cover lots and lots of ground. So what I'd be more likely to do is go, okay, so who feels like a kind of a chunk on its own. And so I'd build a who framework. I'd go, so if we had to work out who I was working with, what would be the kind of 3 or 4 or 5 core things for that? Well, I'd have demographics, I'd have fears, I'd have frustrations, I'd have wants, I'd have aspirations, I'd have whatever else. And so I go, great, that feels like it's too big to just, to fit in with everything else. We're going to make that one. And then I'm just going to list out the sub-steps. Each one of those steps is going to be a square on a worksheet, and that's going to become a framework. So it's basically list, then chunk, step 2, then sequence, like what order would these go in, and then decide on a worksheet layout. And once you've built a bunch of worksheets,
that's awesome, because I've been working on worksheets and that kind of stuff, and now I get it. You're just basically taking that and then just presenting that verbally.
Yeah, it's like, what would I do with a client, and then how do I translate to a page? So, my worksheets usually are landscape, and what have you got layout-wise? Like, here's a worksheet tip. This is geeky. Dan, please forgive me. Create a template worksheet, like a blank one that all of your worksheets get built on, and make it a 12 by 12. So imagine a grid. So you've got your headline up here, maybe your logo down there, and imagine it's got 12 columns and 12 rows. Here's why 12 is good, because most of your worksheets are going to be either 2 columns, or they're going to be 3 columns, or they're going to be 4 columns. And so 12 divides into 2, 4, and 3 really, really easily. Yeah. So if all of a sudden I realize I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, well then I'm like, okay, it's going to be 3, and it's like that, and that's my worksheet. So 12 by 12, and then divide it up from there. I know this is super geeky, and Dan, we're going to kill it now.
No, this is good. I was going to ask a similar question. So you're actually doing this on a physical. What are you doing it on a whiteboard, on a physical piece of paper, or?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm doing it on. I'm not like, I've got an online business. I work pen and paper. I've got a stand-up desk and a big roll of brown paper, like a freaking old school scroll. And it just comes up my desk, comes up and scrolls along, and I just Sharpie marker, scribble, take photo, scribble, drag, take photo, and I just send the photos to my designer, and he makes the worksheets.
Oh, awesome!
And just like makes a nice, pretty PDF or something like that.
Yep, 100%. Yeah. And so we've got the workflow down. When I build a 2-day workshop, the scroll is usually about 40 meters long. because it's got the worksheets and the models and the exercises and the whole thing. And for fun, I'll bring in the 40-meter scroll and I'll stick it up at the back of the room so people can see the work that went into the workshop they're in. It's pretty cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's good fun.
Very good. Well, this has been epic. This has been epic. Yeah. Thanks for coming on. I heard you said that was powerful. We're all kind of talking, but thanks for coming on, Brenton. And thank you, Taki. That was epic. The props were exploding at the end there. So, and if you don't know Blab, that's a good thing.
Yeah, I don't know Blab, and I'm glad the props are a good thing. And if they are a good thing, then exploding sounds like exactly what they should be doing right now.
Yeah, they are. So thank you so much for your time. Just I guess a final call to action. What's the best way for people to learn more about what you do?
Check me out at coachmarketingmachine.com. There are a ton of free tools and training on how to grow a coaching or consulting business. Dude, if you're in the like SaaS or startup space, check Dan out. He's way better at that than me. He's amazing. But if you're a coach or a consultant, a trainer, then I'm probably the best looking Australian you'll find to teach you this stuff. And come on, check me out at coachmarketingmachine.com. Cool. If you want to go deep on some frameworks on how to scale up this stuff, come to one of the workshops. Really happy to help. It'd be freaking epic.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you generously giving us your time, and it was an amazing session. People are going to really enjoy this on the replay as well. So thanks again. Have a great day.
Pleasure, man. Thanks so much.
See you, man. See you soon.
Thanks, Blab crew.
See you guys. Catch you guys in the Facebook group. We've got Nick Davis talking WordPress themes in a couple of hours. More of like a beginner session around what is WordPress, what themes to use for 7-day startup businesses. And I'll see you guys in the group. That Taki Total Boss. Hopefully someone can replay that and write some notes because, damn, that guy moves fast. Right.